Ralph Silva, analyst at Silva Research Network with more than 20 years' experience in investment banking. Hi, Ralph. Just how much risk are we talking about here? I mean, can you quantify it at this stage?
It's difficult to quantify it at this stage, but let's be realistic here. The reason why we need to recapitalize the banks has nothing to do with Greece or anything to do with sovereign debt default. The problem is that banks are not growing. The economy is not allowing them to grow, and especially European banks are not profitable unless they're actually growing, and the economy doesn't permit that, and that's why they need to be recapitalized.
So what's the solution there? I mean, do the politicians get that?
I think they are starting to realize that they have to actually assume that the economy is not going to grow when they start putting money into the banks, because the last time they capitalized the banks, they assumed a growth level that just simply didn't materialize. The truth is, we can't save all the banks. I think politicians have to start realizing that there might be the smaller or the last tier of banks. Maybe we just have to let those disappear.
And those banks are where? In the usual suspects, Greece, Portugal, Spain?
Spain, Germany, and Germany especially, those two countries actually have to deal with their banking industry a lot more aggressively than the rest.
Why? What about the French banks, Société Générale, and of course you've got UniCredit in Italy?
They're well-capitalized organizations right now. Yes, the credit crisis will actually hurt them. The Greek credit crisis will actually hurt them, but not to a point where they're going to need additional capital. They all need capital because of the Basel III Accord that's coming into play, a new regulation that's coming into play in 3 years. They're all going to have to capitalize for that, but there's no risk of even Société Générale or any of these big banks actually going under right now.
No, but I thought the stress tests were meant to have taken care of all this.
That's right, and they did, because most of the big banks actually passed with flying colors. It's the smaller banks, the 100 to 300, that level of banks, those are the ones that are in trouble. Those are the ones that are going to need most capital.
Timescale, Ralph. How long have we got for this to be enacted, I suppose?
How long do we have? Basically, it's going to take at least 3 months to get the money into the banks, so we're going to get towards the end of the year. The banks should be fine towards the end of the year. The problem is if we give the money to every bank, like banks like HSBC don't need it, but they're obviously going to take it because it's cheap money. We have to be more selective on where we put the money into the banks.
Elarian said last week we are really on the verge of a banking crisis. Do you fully accept that?
I don't think we're out of the crisis yet. I think it's the same crisis. We just haven't solved it. I think we still have the potential of having a lot of bank defaults, and we have to be very, very careful to make sure it doesn't become a systemic risk.
What sort of systemic risk, then, are we actually looking at? I mean, you know, what might happen if this does not happen that you're suggesting, and what maybe the finance ministers like George Osborne says, you know, we've got 6 months.
We're not like the U.S. In the U.S., a bank fails, you have a couple of bankruptcies, no problem. We don't exactly know. If we have 5 or 6 bankruptcies of banks in Europe, we don't know what's going to happen because it's never happened before. That's where the risk happens. If people start getting a little nervous, start pulling their money out and putting it under the mattresses, then we all have some trouble.
And what did you make of what came out of the weekend, you know, the firewall around Greece? I mean, when I heard that, I was thinking, maybe a couple of years ago that might have worked. We are maybe beyond that. Is this fund that they're talking about, 3 trillion, Lynn's just told us, is that going to be enough to calm the market?
Sadly, I don't think so. I think we're going to actually need more money than that, but I think we need to be more selective and be more careful about where we put the money. But right now, we're looking at having this problem for the next 18 months.